Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to get right back into the headlines at this hour as the administration has resumed sending some weapons to Ukraine a week after the Pentagon had directed that some deliveries be paused. That is according to U.S. officials. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed the pause on some shipments last week to allow the Pentagon to assess its weapons stockpiles in a move that caught the White House by surprise. Admiral Mark Montgomery is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies and heads up the Center on Cyber and Technology Innovation. He does have over 30 years of experience in the U.S. Navy and testifies regularly on Capitol Hill on foreign policy issues. Joining us now live to discuss all of this and what happens next. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. And overall, just kind of getting into it right here, what does this decision to resume those weapons transfers there really say about President Trump? Why did he do it, and what does it say overall?
Well, it says, as one would expect, that President Trump is in charge. And I think this decision, made, and I don't think it was made by Pete Hegseth. I think he was signing off on a decision. He signs a lot of decisions every day. This was a big one, but made by some of his lower level subordinates, was inconsistent with where President Trump was going with policy towards Ukraine, but more importantly, Russia. And it's really clear that President Trump has soured on President Putin and his delaying efforts when it comes to achieving a meaningful ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. And so it's a reflection of his desire to end the war, and the impediment to ending that war is Vladimir Putin.
And I did want to ask, because you referred to this, the deliveries here, as a, quote, great first step. What's missing in President Trump's current Ukraine strategy, in your opinion and expertise?
So I think this is the first step, and I think a few more things are needed. The first thing that's needed is to embrace Senator Lindsey Graham's Russia Sanctions Act, and that's to bring real, meaningful sanctions on Russian fossil fuels, their oil and natural gas. That's what primes the Russian economy. And while they are sanctioned, there are secondary and tertiary receivers of that fuel, that oil and natural gas, mostly China and India, who are violating the sanctions by taking these so-called shadow fleet oilers, illegal oilers with oil and natural gas on them. So he wants to sanction those. And if you do that, you'll cut off a lot of funding to Vladimir Putin's regime.
And right here, we actually have a post from Bloomberg as they posted on X and said, Trump said that he plans to make a, quote, major statement on Russia as the U.S. prepares to send a volley of new American weapons to Ukraine via purchases from NATO allies. What do you make of that overall, this statement that's coming on a, quote, major statement on Russia?
Well, I'm hoping that one of the elements of that major statement are the sanctions. The other is clearly going to be the new weapons, access to our defense industrial base, which is key. Kiev or Ukraine needs defensive weapons. That is the Patriot missiles that go on the Patriot launchers, and the what are called AMRAAM missiles that go on the NASAMS launchers, and then the AIM-9 Sidewinders that go on F-16s. Two of those three weapons were paused, and I think all three of them are going to be unpaused, and then access to even more. Those are critical because they shoot down ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones launched by Russia against Ukraine. And we've seen, as your coverage has shown very clearly, that those missiles are not hitting military targets. They're hitting civilian targets, civilian critical infrastructure, and killing civilians. And President Trump wants that to stop. He's told Putin, Vladimir, stop. And if Vladimir won't stop, he's going to give Ukraine the ability to make that, to reduce their likelihood of hitting.
Going a little bit deeper into that right now, can you explain the weapons overall that are being sent over there, and really what you think should be sent over by the U.S. to kind of help Ukraine versus Russia?
So the kind of weapons going over are mostly those defensive weapons, air defense weapons like Patriots, which go on a Patriot launcher, AMRAAMs, which go on NASAMS launchers. Those both shoot down cruise and ballistic missiles. But also AIM-9 Sidewinders, they go on the F-16s that NATO countries have provided Ukraine, and the U.S. is supported with like pilot training and maintenance and stuff, and those shoot down drones and cruise missiles. So that's what's going to go. And also artillery rounds and anti-tank rounds will go. What needs to go in addition, and that's a great question because they do need more. There were places where the Biden administration had come up short, for sure, and that includes like a rocket launcher system that goes on F-16, so you can shoot down drones cheaply. And then this is the key: if he does this, it's the strongest signal to President Putin. Begin the reselling again of long-range strike weapons. That's the guided missile launcher rocket system that goes about 60 miles. That can hit Russian forces behind the lines. And then the ATACMS, which is a long range, more like a 300-mile missile that can really reach even into Russia and strike Russian formations. And so, if he starts to sell those and gives them unrestricted use, which the Biden administration never did, I think Putin's going to really have to think twice, come to the table. So sanctions, defensive systems, offensive weapon systems, that's the whole package that I think pressures Vladimir Putin to the table.
Going kind of in reverse here, as we talk about what happened several months ago here between President Trump and Zelensky over in the White House as they were meeting. Obviously, things were very tense. Some words started flying around. So how do you think that Putin's actions here over the past several weeks with Trump have kind of changed President Trump's thoughts on Ukraine overall?
Well, that's a great point. I think it's two elements. One is Zelensky has really responded to everything President Trump has asked. When President Trump says do this, he does that. He has been an exceptionally compliant and useful and loyal partner to the United States in terms of when he goes to the negotiating table, he carries forth the agenda that President Trump wants. That's number one. President Zelensky is demonstrating his value as a partner. Number two is President Putin's ignoring President Trump. And I mean, to the degree where they have a phone call, he thinks, President Trump will come out and say it went great because Putin told Trump whatever he needed to hear. And about 3 hours later, there's a 700 drone, 50 cruise missile attack into civilian infrastructure in Kiev, which is basically, kind of a big, middle finger. And, the president used some foul language about how Putin treats him. And so I think it's those two things: Zelensky's willingness to do it right and Putin's unwillingness to do anything.
All right. Admiral Mark Montgomery, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and discuss all of this. Obviously a developing story, so we'll keep an eye on it. Is there anything else that you want to add overall that maybe we missed before I let you go?
Yeah, the last thing I'd say is that I spend time with Ukrainian troops. I see how they're fighting. These guys are not, men and women are not going to lose. Even if we were to cut off support, they would still not lose. They're not going to win, but they're not going to lose. But a lot more civilian, if we don't support them, what's really at play are civilian casualties, civilian infrastructure being destroyed by Putin's aggressiveness. So when we step into the breach here, we're not stepping in to try to overthrow the Putin regime. We're stepping in to stop civilian casualties, which is something President Trump believes in.
All right, Admiral, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And I do want to pop this up on your screen once again. This is that post coming in from Bloomberg saying that Trump said that he plans to make a, quote, major statement on Russia as the U.S. does prepare to send a volley of new American weapons to Ukraine via purchases from NATO allies. So we'll bring you more on that statement as we do get it.